Today, in more than a dozen states, residents are free to go.
Governors allowed stay-at-home orders to expire last night in Alabama, in Maine, Idaho, Tennessee, and Texas, among others. Many businesses can reopen, though they may face rules to enforce social distancing and restrict the number of customers. They also face a big unknown. At a moment when the pandemic has killed more than 60,000 Americans, will customers even think it's safe to shop?
NPR's Jim Zaroli has been talking with people who run businesses across this country, and he's on the line. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
How different is the world for a business owner than the world was when they shut their doors back in March, say?
Yeah, mid-March. Seems like a long time ago right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enormously different. Millions of businesses have shut their doors, or at least they've, slowed down production. Tens of millions of workers have been laid off. Nobody's driving, nobody's flying, energy prices are just plummeting. So a lot of companies have just kind of been frozen. So I wanted to find out what it would take to restart some of these companies. I mean, there's this debate right now about when it's really safe to reopen the economy. A lot of states are beginning to do that. So are businesses ready for everything to just return to normal?
And what are you hearing from companies?
Well, one of them, for instance, I talked to was American Giant, which is a clothing company based in San Francisco. It has factories in the Carolinas. It makes hoodies and flannel shirts. And when the lockdown happened, it really came, just as a bolt out of the blue. I mean, the CEO, whose name is Bayard Winthrop, called all his company's suppliers. These were people he'd been working with a long time. And he said, we don't know what's going to happen. We need to put purchases on hold. So right now the company is using its factories to make face masks for the government at the government's request. But the holidays are coming up, which is the big season for the company, for retailers in general. And Winthrop says the company really has to get back to the business of making clothes no later than July. He sells mostly online. But it's hard to know, are his customers going to come back, and in what numbers, and when will that happen?
What worries me, obviously, is that people haven't really fully yet digested how bad this is going to be for the economy. And, if wallets start to really close up, it's just a different scenario, right?
Well, how eager are business owners to return to business in this particular environment?
Well, my sense is they'd love to see things return to normal, but they are anxious. I talked to a truck company owner in California. His name is Harsimran Singh. His trucks transport lettuce and strawberries, things like that, from the Central Valley in California to the Midwest and the Northeast, and a lot of it goes to restaurants. But as we know, most of the restaurants are closed right now. So in the meantime, his fleet of 150 trucks is just sitting idle, and he has drivers who are sitting at home and really want to work. He's keeping them on staff because he got a small business loan through the Paycheck Protection Program, but that's going to run out in a few weeks.
If I do not get work back to normal in next month or so, we'll have to shut it down.
So Singh is really wondering, when will the restaurants reopen? And even when they do, many people have lost their jobs. Will they even have any money to spend? And those are the kinds of questions no one can really answer right now.
A reminder that every business depends on other businesses, not to mention their customers. Jim, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
NPR's Jim Zaroli. Workers for some businesses intend to stop on this May 1st.
Much of the world knows today as International Workers' Day, a day to celebrate labor. People at some big retail and delivery companies chose this day for a protest.
Which NPR retail correspondent Alina Selyuk is covering. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's the plan for this protest?
Well, the workers who are organizing the event are calling it a general strike. They're urging workers to skip going to work. Now, we don't know how many people will actually participate in this, but the workers say they have folks coming from a long list of retail and delivery companies, as you pointed out. That includes Amazon, its grocery chain Whole Foods, also Target and its delivery app Shipt, and then Walmart, Instacart, and FedEx. You should know that most of these companies are among NPR's financial supporters. And broadly speaking, the participants are saying they did not sign up to be on the front lines of a deadly pandemic. They signed up to ring you up at the cash register or pack your latest online order, or maybe deliver your groceries, but not to deal with life and death, which is how many workers put it these days. And they're saying the companies are not doing enough to protect them. And they're also saying they're frustrated that the companies aren't really releasing information about how many workers have been sick, which is at least in dozens, and how many have
So they want transparency, and specifically what else?
Yeah, so my team has been talking to so many workers from all kinds of these essential jobs at supermarkets, food factories, warehouses, and they talk a lot about having more access to protective gear, gloves, and masks, wanting to be able to take time off without losing pay, whether or not they are sick. And a lot of that time off if they do get sick. But it's also clear that their COVID-related concerns are kind of stacking up on top of years of other frustrations, mainly about low pay and limited benefits, in some cases changing pay formulas, in case of gig gaps, or unpredictable scheduling in retail and fast food. Here's one of the organizers, shipped delivery worker Willie Solis, who says today's strike is about showing how much these different workers have in common.
It seems to be profit over people for the most part, and that is where the disconnect is, because at the end of the day, the workforce and the work laborers are the ones that are helping these companies become who they are.
How do the companies respond to workers like that?
Yeah, so we reached out to all of them and they had a lot to say, but just to summarize, they say they welcome input from workers. They say they have added bonuses or temporary pay bumps, that they have stepped up health and safety measures. Amazon, for its part, stood out in its response because it accused labor groups of being irresponsible in this moment. They're saying that these groups are spreading criticisms and accusations that are false. They don't represent the majority of its workers. And it's true, labor and community organizers have been springing to actions. Strikes and protests have really escalated in the last few weeks. And just as an observation, in retail, gig economy, warehousing, fast food, all these labor battles have been playing out for years, sort of in their own silos. And the coronavirus pandemic has many low-wage workers declared essential, and so they're being shown sort of as a broad, wide spotlight on their so-called unskilled labor.
Alina, thanks so much.
Thank you.
NPR retail correspondent Alina Selden. Some other news now. Today, for the first time, Joe Biden directly responds to an accusation of sexual assault.
The presumptive Democratic nominee for president takes questions on MSNBC. His accuser is Tara Reid. She worked as a junior staffer in Biden's Senate office in 1993 when she says the assault occurred. Biden's campaign has dismissed the accusation as false.
NPR's Esma Khalid has been reporting on this story and is on the line, and we should note we're about to discuss allegations that many listeners will find disturbing. Esma, good morning.
Good morning.
What have you heard in your conversations with Tara Reid?
Well, I've spoken to her multiple times, and she told me that at some point in the spring of 1993, she delivered a duffel bag to Joe Biden in a hallway on Capitol Hill. This is what Reid told me happened when she met up with Biden.
He put me up against the wall, and his hands went underneath my clothing, and he was touching me in my private areas, and without my consent.
Reid said Biden penetrated her vagina with his fingers. She could not recall the exact date or location of the alleged assault. Reid told me that she told her late mother, her brother, and a friend about the incident at the time. Her brother was able to recall part of the story in a text message with me. I spoke to the friend who did not want to be named, and she told me that she recalls Reid telling her the story in 1993, as she's now detailing it. I've also since spoken to an old neighbor of Reid's who said that she remembers her sharing this story in the mid-90s. It is important to note, Steve, these are all people that Reid has connected us with.
How has Biden's campaign responded?
His deputy campaign manager, Kate Bedingfield, put out a statement that was disputing the allegation. She pointed out that Biden fought for the passage of the Violence Against Women Act, and she said that women do have a right to be heard, but such claims should also be diligently reviewed by the press. What's clear about this claim, she says, is that it is, quote, untrue. This absolutely did not happen. And Steve, in reporting out this story, I interviewed multiple staffers in Biden's office from the time period. They all cast doubt on Reid's story. You know, they told me that the type of behavior she's describing is just so counter to the culture they personally experienced. And Reid told me that at the time she reported her concerns about harassment, not about assault, to 3 people in Biden's Senate office at the time. All 3 of them say she did not. The thing is, you know, some of the details in Reid's stories that she's told have changed, and that is why some Biden supporters suggest that possibly she has a political motive. They also question her past praise for the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, which she has now walked back. But still, you know, Biden supporters question her credibility, and they ask why, as recently as 2017, she had taken to the internet to praise Joe Biden.
Okay, so Biden's supporters have raised questions about her story, but Biden has not addressed these allegations until now. Why is he going on television today?
Well, Republicans have been amplifying Reed's story and pressuring Democrats to respond, which, Steve, is tricky because, of course, President Trump has been accused of multiple incidents of sexual assault, which he denies. But still, Reed's allegations have put Democrats in this really tricky position. They are torn between defending the presumptive Democratic nominee and believing all women who make allegations against any powerful man. Yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about the allegation, and she began by saying that she has a lot of respect for the Me Too movement, but that she's also proud to support Biden, and she thinks that due process is important. But still, some women's rights advocates have been more directly putting pressure on Biden to personally respond, which he will do later this morning on MSNBC.
Okay, then we'll listen for the results of that. Asma, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
NPR's Asma Khalid.
More than 60,000 Americans have died of COVID-19. That is tens of thousands of families figuring out how to grieve while social distancing, and tens of thousands of funerals that have fundamentally changed. Pat Marmo is a funeral director in New York City who has been coping with this crisis every single day. He joined us from his car earlier this week. It had been a busy morning. He had already done 3 funerals. Can you describe what your job has been like this past month?
My job has been so desensitized in comparison to the way it was before. And what I mean by that is that we're just trying to get people's loved ones to their final disposition, minus the ceremonies and the tributes. And we're just doing logistical, move the person from a hospital, get the person to a crematory, get the person to a cemetery. It's become where you don't take the time that we normally would with a family.
That must be hard as well, because that, as you mentioned, there's so much more to being a funeral director than the logistics, right? I mean,
so much more.
You are counselors, you are there to receive people's grief, and you're saying you just can't do that right now.
It's so hard because I could be speaking to a family about their current situation, and my mind is on the other family I just met, and I didn't have a chance to update my notes. So I'm sitting there going, I have to make sure I update notes on the previous family that just left my office. So I'm really distracted. I know a lot of other funeral professionals in the city are experiencing the same thing. There's just so much details when it comes to arranging a funeral that it's so easy to make a mistake.
What kind of questions are you hearing from families?
The big misconception with the public is they think that they have to cremate.
Because of the virus?
Yeah. I'll get phone calls from families. Well, I know that you can't do a funeral. We just want to arrange a cremation. I'm like, no. You're mistaken. You have a right of doing a burial or a cremation. Some funeral homes may have policies in regards to COVID cases. We try to limit time, and we definitely limit people that come to our funeral home, because my staff is dealing with this, and they're overwhelmed. I had one person quit on me just about 20 minutes before you guys called.
Just because it's too much?
Too much.
Yeah.
She just couldn't handle it, and I'm trying to go into with optimism. We're gonna beat this virus. We're gonna get people taken care of. I'm trying to build morale, trying to do what I can to keep my staff mentally in this.
How are you managing it? It's a lot of pressure on you.
It's a lot. My days are just doing funeral work. That's all I do. I start extremely early because I return phone calls at 6 a.m. I tell families that want new services that the only time I can speak to you is either after 9 p.m. or around 6 a.m. and I'll call you around those times. It's okay. Because I really am, like other funeral directors are trying to do the same. We're trying to really take care of families as best as we could, because that's what we're used to doing. But we're really, it's tough to really spend time to make an arrangement. It's really tough.
You mentioned having to compartmentalize, right? You just got to go through the motions. You just got to get this done. You got to get the next family managed. But that can have a toll if you put it all inside. When do you release it?
I can't release it right now. I'm an avid run. I run. I tend to run 20 miles a week. I can't do that now. The only thing I have is I have this like visualization of crossing a finish line and things to go back the way they were. And I keep thinking about the day that I'm able to really get back to business as usual. And I know it's going to come. And that's what I keep thinking about. I keep thinking that this is what I chose to do. And I really like being a funeral director. I like taking care of people. I keep reminding myself that this is a service that we're doing for our communities and families in the neighborhoods that we have institutions in, and we just got to keep it moving. We just got to help people.
Well, we are thinking of you and your staff and the broader New York community. And we appreciate that you took some time out of your very busy day to talk with us. Pat Marmo, he's the owner and funeral director for Daniel J. Schaefer Funeral Home and CEO of International Funeral Service of New York. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Take care.
Well, thousands of people went on YouTube last night to watch musicians sing about space and isolation.
Giant steps I watch you take, walking on the moon.
Sting was one of the performers for the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum's virtual concert, Space Songs, Through the Distance.
Nearly a dozen musicians and groups contributed from home. Here's singer-songwriter Valerie June performing her original song, Astral Plane.
And I was transported from my tiny little New York kitchen up into the ether.
Ben Gibbard of Death Cab for Cutie performed a new song called Proxima B.
Proxima B, bathed in a glow of sensory. Proxima B, careless and free.
A star of Hamilton, Daveed Diggs, also made an appearance with his group Clipping.
He's missing something pretty. He's missing where the air tastes gritty. He's missing the splendor and misery of bodies of cities that being missed. There must be a better place to be somebody else.
And actor Edward James Olmos recited part of the message carried by NASA's Voyager probe launched in 1977.
We're attempting to survive our times and live into yours. We hope someday, having solved the problems we face, to join a community of galactic civilizations.
However you are trying to survive in these times, Sting says he may as well play and get to enjoy the music.
What's up, nerds? I'm Maddie Sophia, host of Shortwave, the daily science podcast from NPR. We bring you new discoveries, everyday mysteries, and the science behind the headlines, all in about 10 minutes. Think of it as a little daily brain snack. And who doesn't love snacks? You know what I'm saying? Listen to Shortwave from NPR.
This morning,
workers at some big companies went on strike today, among them Walmart, the delivery app Instacart, and Amazon.
This company failed us. It failed the workers. It failed me.
That is the voice of Christian Smalls right outside an Amazon warehouse on Staten Island. He worked there until recently. Smalls and other protesters say their jobs have gotten dangerous during this pandemic, and they want the companies to do more to protect them. NPR's Shannon Bond has been following these protests and joins us now. Hey, Shannon.
Hey, Elsa.
So give us a sense of what these protests looked like how many people turned out.
Well, organizers tell me that thousands of workers said they were going to take part in this general strike. And today is a notable day. It's May 1st, International Workers' Day. Around the world, it's typically a big day for labor activism. And there were these protests outside several Amazon warehouses around the country. But, it's also kind of hard to gather a lot of people together right now.
Right. I mean, how do you even stay 6 feet apart from each other on a picket line?
That's right. So a lot of these actions today are actually employees calling in sick. They didn't show up to work. And gig workers who deliver groceries for apps like Instacart and Shipt, that's an app owned by Target, they're also at home. They're not accepting orders on those apps. So some of this protest is kind of invisible.
Interesting. Well, tell us, what do these workers want specifically from these companies?
Yeah, well, they have some immediate demands related to the pandemic. They're asking for more protective gear like gloves and masks, more cleanings of stores and warehouses. They want to be able to take more time off with pay if they get sick or if they're at higher risk of COVID-19. I talked to Carrie Blair today. She's a mom of 5 kids in Akron, Ohio, and she delivers for Shipt to make extra money. But she says right now it's just not worth the risk to go out. She says that's the case for lots of workers, and that's why they're all coming together today.
People who work at Whole Foods, at Target, at Walmart, there's no way to get around not being around people. That is your job. People are in and out of those stores all day, every day.